Roy had come back to life 139 times. Every time he died, he woke up again on the same morning. He relived everything from that day, so he knew every single detail. On the 139th revival, he woke up, ducked to avoid a knife, sat up, put on his shoes, dodged another strike, stood up, then bent down to dodge yet again. He knew every move this killer would make, the exact timing angle of each strike. He could effortlessly dodge attacks, blocking the knife with just his t-shirt. Roy poured himself a hot cup of coffee, took a sip, waited for the killer to stand up, then splashed the hot coffee right in his face. Next came the attack helicopter. A second assassin on board would fire a Gatling gun. Roy hid behind a pillar, knowing the first burst of bullets would kill the first assassin. Exactly 8 seconds later, the Gatling gun jammed. Roy stepped out, threw a knife, landing it right in the gunman's head. Once that killer was down, the Gatling gun malfunctioned, its bullets slowly drifting right. Roy simply followed the trail safely away. Honestly, Roy had no idea why people were after him. He only knew the helicopter would crash into his room in 8 seconds, its rotor blades falling 13 seconds later. Oh, one more thing. The helicopter exploded after 18 seconds. He jumped out the window, landing perfectly in a garbage truck. You probably didn't know this, but Roy missed that garbage truck 22 times before. One time he landed in the street, got flattened by a truck. Next, Roy stole a sports car. Since he kept coming back, he didn't care about laws anymore. The car's driver screamed the same line every single time. But no one ever helped him. Roy also grabbed the driver's sunglasses. Then the third wave of assassins showed up. A pair of gun-toting sisters. Roy had to get away quickly. They'd killed him 14 times before. But it wasn't just these two. In a single day, Roy faced at least 7 waves of killers. He'd been blown up by the bomb maniac, Kaboom, twice, killed 3 times by his own clone, and he died 8 times at the hands of the swordswoman Guan Yin. Roy had killed everyone else at least once, but Guan Yin was just too strong. She always appeared out of nowhere, decapitating him with one swift strike. Afterward, she'd proudly say, "I am Guan Yin, and I have done this." Sometimes Roy managed to escape all these killers. Guess what he did then? He didn't even try to figure out why they were hunting him or investigate the mystery behind it all. Instead, he went to a bar, asked the bartender for 2 bottles of China's strongest liquor, drank himself into oblivion. He'd tried fighting back before, but there were just too many assassins, all too strong. He had never lived past 12:47 p.m., so eventually, he simply gave up trying. Roy actually had a pretty good guess who put him into this endless loop. It must have been his ex-wife, Gemma. Gemma was a top physicist at Dino Labs. Just yesterday, Roy had visited Gemma at her lab. She seemed really nervous. She begged Roy for help, but wouldn't say exactly what she needed. When he wasn't paying attention, she secretly snipped off a lock of Roy's hair. Then she said, "I hope you stop wasting your life. Pull yourself together and become the man you used to be." Roy had been in special forces before, but after leaving the military, he had nothing to do. Middle-aged and aimless, he spiraled downward. That's why Gemma divorced him. But now, for some reason, Gemma had given him another chance. Oh no, it wasn't just one chance. It was unlimited chances. Roy had tried calling Gemma, but instead, her boss, Colonel Ventor, picked up. Ventor said, "Gemma is already dead. You're next." So clearly, Ventor was the one behind everything. But Roy still didn't have the motivation to take Ventor down, because every day was hell mode. He couldn't even pass the first level, until his 145th resurrection. Roy hid out in an underground mall. By sheer luck, he saw his son, Joe. Roy hadn't been a good dad. He hadn't seen Joe in a very long time, felt guilty about it. So he decided to talk with his son. When he walked Joe out of the underground mall, he suddenly noticed it was already 12:50. This was the longest he'd ever survived. Why hadn't the assassins appeared during this time? Then Roy realized something. Underground had no cell signal. That meant he had a tracker implanted somewhere. Right then, the assassins appeared, closing in one by one. Roy's first reaction wasn't to run away. Instead, he turned, hugged Joe tight, but it was already too late. All the assassins fired at once. Bullets ripped into Roy's back. As he lay dying, Roy looked deeply at Joe. This death didn't end in pain. Instead, he saw shock, sadness, love in his son's eyes. And for the first time, Roy felt truly happy. Revival number 146. Roy grabbed the assassin hard, demanded to know how he was tracking him. But the assassin was tough. He refused to talk, even until death. So Roy had to figure it out himself. He went to his friend Dave, the counter-surveillance expert, and asked him, if someone implanted a tracker in a human, where would it most likely be? Dave said, in the teeth. Suddenly, Roy remembered the hot girl he met last night, a dentist. During their date, she brought Roy to her clinic and worked on his teeth. Roy rushed into the bathroom, began pulling out his teeth one by one. Each tooth he pulled, he took a swig of strong liquor. The pain was unbelievable. unbelievable. Finally, he found the tooth with the tracker. From that day onward, could predict the assassin's predictions. He used that tooth as bait to lure them out one by one. Then he defeated them easily. After defeating all the assassins, his next target was Venter. Venter was at Dino Labs. Roy drove straight there, accelerating hard to smash through the entrance. Instead, he hit a wall, crashed, died instantly. On his next revival, he tried again. Roy sped his car inside. There were over a dozen heavily armed security guards, but Roy wasn't actually in the car. Instead, he had planted explosives, blowing away the security checkpoint doors. But he hadn't expected the head of security to suddenly appear beside him. All right, try again. On his third try, Roy killed his clone assassin. Then he disguised himself as the clone, used his ID card to sneak into the building. He got into the elevator heading up to the top floor. Inside the elevator, an armed guard asked him for his ID card. Roy swiped the card, discovered he didn't have clearance. The big guy immediately killed Roy. Fourth try, Roy entered the elevator, immediately shot the guard first. But when the doors opened, a bunch of security guards stood there, guns pointed, quickly shot himself in the head, shocking everyone. Fifth try, Roy killed the guard again, but then noticed a security camera in the elevator. No wonder the guards outside were always waiting for him. Sixth try, Roy disguised himself as the guard early on, finally avoiding the camera detection. He reached the hallway, but found Guan Yin, the swordswoman, waiting there. Roy had a gun, she had a sword. It was obvious who should win, right? But Guan Yin moved like lightning. Bullets couldn't even touch her. She sliced Roy's gun in half, then swiftly cut off Roy's head. Revival 152. Roy brought a submachine gun fired rapidly at Guan Yin. She still dodged every bullet effortlessly, stabbing Roy in the stomach, decapitating him again. Revival 153. Roy picked up a rifle, still couldn't hit her. Again, he lost his head. After dying over 20 times, Roy finally understood guns wouldn't beat Guan Yin. He needed a sword, so Roy found Dai Feng, a Chinese swordmaster from Wudang, who had been world champion for 12 consecutive years. He begged her to teach him sword fighting. Because Roy was genuinely sincere, Dai Feng agreed. They began by practicing with their bare hands, pretending their fingers were swords. Roy got badly beaten up by Dai Feng. When practice ended each day, Roy killed himself and started over again. Gradually, he began to understand the art of swordsmanship. Soon, he upgraded to a wooden sword, but still got beaten badly. Yet slowly, Roy's stance and strikes improved greatly. On his 174th revival, Roy managed to hold his own against Dai Feng for a few moves. After countless revivals, he finally reached the point of using real swords. After just 7 moves, Roy defeated Dai Feng. Roy respectfully thanked Dai Feng and headed back to the Dinu Labs facility. There, he faced Guan Yin again. Roy calmly put down his gun and took a sword from the wall. Guan Yin attacked swiftly, but Roy stood steady as a mountain. Within 2 moves, he sliced off a lock of Guan Yin's hair. They continued fighting. Roy placed his left hand behind his back, using only his right hand to wield the sword. This time, Guan Yin stood no chance. Repeatedly, Roy's blade grazed her throat until finally, he took her down. Then Colonel Ventor appeared, an old man with white hair, not exactly great at fighting. Roy quickly subdued him. In pain, Ventor finally realized why Roy had become so powerful. It must have been his ex-wife, Gemma, who had activated Dino Labs' ultimate technology before dying, the infinite restart machine. Ventor originally planned to use this tech to rule the world, but to stop him, Gemma had turned Roy into the guinea pig instead, with an evil grin. Ventor revealed, "I also sent someone to kill your son, Joe. You're probably too late to save him now." Roy panicked. He immediately finished off Venture, jumped into a car, and raced to save Joe. But he arrived too late, finding only Joe's lifeless body. Roy realized, despite countless revivals, he had never managed to save his son. He broke down completely. How could he fail this badly as a father? Just then, a massive explosion erupted. In the distance, the infinite restart machine had overloaded and exploded, destroying the entire city. Roy revived once again. He had lost all hope in himself. Every wasted minute of his past life had led to today's endless tragedy. It was all his fault. So he stopped fighting and let the first assassin kill him. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. He died, revived, died, revived. Until this time, Roy suddenly stood up again. He wanted to make things right. He wanted to pick himself up, just as Gemma had once told him. Roy went to Joe, the son he'd never spent time with. He talked with him, played video games, bought him snacks. When the city exploded, Roy just restarted the day and spent another day with Joe. Slowly, Roy began to understand his son. He discovered the joy of being with Joe and gradually learned how to be a father. Until one day, Joe mentioned something surprising. His mom had called him that morning. Roy suddenly realized Gemma was still alive every morning. He still had a chance to save her. Roy rushed back to the lab. After taking out Venter and his men, Roy watched the security footage. He saw Gemma get killed at exactly 7:14 a.m. Roy revived each morning at exactly 7 a.m., meaning he had exactly 14 minutes each day to save Gemma. When Roy revived again, he raced against time. He jumped into the helicopter and ordered the pilot to fly directly to the lab. He arrived at exactly 7:10. At 7:12, he used the Gatling gun to wipe out all the assassins in just 10 seconds. 2 minutes later, he stormed through the lab, clearing out enemies as he went. Right before Venter killed Gemma, Roy shot Ventor first. Roy had done it. He saved Gemma, defeated Ventor. Gemma hugged Roy tightly and whispered, "I knew you could do it." Wait, the world wasn't completely saved yet. The machine would still explode soon. Gemma said the only way to stop it was for someone to enter the machine's core, but it was a huge gamble. The person who entered might disappear forever. Roy looked at Gemma and thought of his son, Joe. He was no longer the broken man he once was. Now he was a husband and a father, someone willing to sacrifice everything to protect his family. Without hesitation, Roy approached the machine. He stepped into its core and was swallowed by a blinding light. The screen faded into darkness. If you enjoyed the recap, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next amazing recap. Until then, take care.